It is true that Martin Luther King Jr. and I were close friends and strategists and teachers of nonviolent struggle from around December 1st, when he became the major spokesperson in 1955 of the Montgomery bus boycott, until his death in April the 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, where, as already been said, I was a pastor. And in between that time, we were collectively profoundly committed to the notion that the nation must change under the impact of nonviolent struggle, theory and practice, or that the nation would become the leading entity in helping the human family to commit suicide. There's a great mystery in life. One of the most profound mysteries that I know of is the fact in a vast universe like ours, a universe we know so very little about, even though we've had the Hubble telescope and we now have the Webb telescope away from the Earth 1,000,000 miles. But there is a mystery that in science, across more than a century, we know of only one heavenly body, the Earth, where life like ours, as we know it, exists. The astrophysicist and cosmologist, as well as the theologian, at least this one, is puzzled by the fact that in our universe, only one heavenly body has life like ours. And it has to be a gift. It has to be almost beyond imagination. But I want this afternoon very briefly to indicate why we have a Martin Luther King holiday and why on the Washington Mall there is only one non-political figure that is non-elected official. Washington, Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Martin Luther King Jr. Astonishing. I watched it happen. I saw it happen. I participated in it in various ways. So I want us to understand a little bit about what King represents. He represents the first person in the 20th century, the major person who decided early in his life, as young as many of you, that racial segregation was an evil of great spiritual power, and that it must be resisted, and that it must be the people of the USA who would rise up, and black people in particular, to tear it down and dismantle it, lest it destroy the nation and the earth. So one, I want you to understand, Martin Luther King Jr. was the great advocate, at the age of 24 or 25, was the voice not only for truth and justice in the United States, but in Africa, in Asia, in Europe and across Canada and the United States and Mexico. At age 24, 25, his voice was heard by essentially the billions of people of the earth who knew that his voice represented a singular hope that the human race could not only explore the untapped potential of life, but that the human race would be allowed to go on and survive beyond the coldness of the universe in which we live. And as a boy growing up within the church, he began to see that the best weapon against racism and sexism and violence and what I call plantation capitalism is human beings learning to reuse the powers of love, the powers of compassion, the powers of trust and respect, to embrace the extraordinary gift of life and to use the gift itself, the gift of life itself, as the power that can create new heavens and new earth. King represents the first person in the Western civilization that said violence is evil, it is a sin, it is a force of spiritual wickedness, and it cannot produce life as human beings need it or dream it and want it. And so he engaged from Montgomery in the Montgomery bus boycott, and for about a 20-year period, even after his death, we have what the late Congressman John Lewis called the nonviolent movement of America. The Montgomery bus boycott, the sit-in campaign, the Freedom Ride, the Albany movement, the Birmingham movement, the Mississippi Summer, and in that 20-year period, the United States Congress, especially with Presidents Kennedy and Johnson, passed the Voting Rights Bill, the Civil Rights Bill of 1965, passed Head Start. Medicare and Medicaid were passed in the 60s by this movement that marched, that went to jail, that faced the guns of the police and the sheriffs across the southeast and southwestern part of the country, south central part of the country, refused to stop. And Martin King was the advocate and the voice, the symbol of our struggle, the sign of our work. Let me define for you briefly nonviolence, because it's not a grammar lesson adding non to violence. It did not come from some classroom in the United States or Great Britain over the English language. It was invented by a man named Mohandas K. Gandhi around 1906. He was trying to translate the idea that love has power, that life is sacred, that human life has infinite possibilities that we cannot even imagine. He was trying to propose a different science for personal and social change. So he took an ancient word, ahimsa, from the Jainist religion 600 years before Jesus of Nazareth, and translated that word, nonviolence. without a dash.
All right.
As the best way of trying to intervene in the 20th century, that the human race is failing to use the mightiest force it possesses. If it wants a new world, a new city, if it wants people who are committed to life itself. Ahimsa, translated by Gandhi into the word nonviolence. It represents love and truth and action, love and truth and beauty, translated into action that dismantles the wrong. It gives us human beings the space and the breath to experiment with the true and the beautiful and the just, with the beloved community, with lifting the hopes of every boy and every girl anywhere on earth. So I commend you, Martin Luther King Jr., who intervened in Western civilization with the notion that violence is evil, never allows human life to reach its full possibilities. That nonviolence or soul force or truth force has powers we have hardly ever tapped. That if we begin to use that rather than our culture, we will be astonished at the change that we will wrought in ourselves, in others, in our nation, and in our world. Nonviolence represents love, the massive power of life, untapped largely by us. What we saw happen in the United States across the land was the white-colored signs, the no Jew signs, the no Mex signs, the no Jack signs, all around the United States came down. We benefit today because the dismantling of racism and sexism and violence in a plantation capitalist has begun. Make no mistakes about this. The struggles in the future will be probably more perplexing and painful than the struggles of the past. But Martin Luther King Jr. is the voice that speaks to us still. Now let us rededicate ourselves to the long, often painful, yet beautiful struggle to enable a new world truly to appear. So it is right that this country, that is not the best democracy in the world, has often not been able to talk about democracy among ourselves and with one another. This moment, a painful passage of time, where one of our two political parties, in fact, is, as never before, calling for a society where hate, fear, and violence, and injustice prevail, are justified and prevail. But hear then the words of Martin Luther King Jr. We face a moment where it will either be nonviolent coexistence or co-annihilation. The way of nonviolence is the way to let human life soar as never imagined. As one cosmologist said, to so learn the mind of God that we will make the earth fair and the heavens a place that indeed makes life possible. Martin Luther King's birthday is about this wonderful friend and man who became, for me and for others, a Jesus, a Moses, an Eleanor Roosevelt, a voice in the midst of perplexing struggle, but a voice for truth and possibility. Many of the opportunities that you now have in this orchestra are opportunities that now exist because Martin Luther King Jr. led the nonviolent movement of America, made up largely of us black people and people of color, but tore down the signs, broke the structures of exclusion, and opened up possibilities that we cannot yet imagine. So let us rededicate ourselves to that struggle.
Yes, sir.
Through your music, yes. Through your studies, yes. Through your work. Let us claim life as love and truth and wonder. And let us continue the struggle. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday is about our continuing the movement until our nation becomes indeed a haven of truth and love.
All right. Yes, sir.